Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm here at Apex 2020 and I'm joined by Ron Keith. Ron, you're not from Riverwood Solutions now, it's Supply Chain Resources Group. In the middle of a bit of a supply chain challenge, to say the least. We can talk about that a little bit. What I really wanted to talk about is what it means in terms of supply chains, and the companies that are coping better than others now, I assume, have both more robust and more agile supply chains, and that's what we really need to develop. So I wanted to talk a bit about where we are at the moment and the kind of supply chains that allow you to mitigate and to manage some of the risk that this creates.
So one of the big challenges that companies have is they feel a lot of pricing pressure, and so they want to create the most efficient supply chain, and that works when it works, and it can really work against you when you have unexpected events. So obviously if you concentrate production, you get some economies of scale, you get a steeper learning curve and things like that. But you can sometimes, maybe 4 or 5 times in the last 20 years, you can take your production to zero because it is so concentrated in one area. Some geopolitical event happens, some natural disaster happens. And so the people that realize that in the long game, if you mitigate the risk by spreading out your concentration a little bit, maybe there's a half a point extra you pay on an ongoing basis, but you don't necessarily go to zero. We've got some customers that over the last couple of years have been looking to go from China only to maybe China and Vietnam, China and Malaysia, China and Thailand. And, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of money, but they're looking like geniuses right now, having at least some ability to meet customer demand as opposed to being completely shut down.
Yeah, and that's been the huge issue. And I think one of the things that I found interesting, and we talk regularly, and we've co-authored a few pieces on kind of supply chain challenges, and we went from talking in December about the predictable shutdown around Chinese New Year, and suddenly we're in an unpredictable situation, and they're quite different. Managing a predictable disruption is one thing, but where we are now is made more difficult because we have no end game at the moment.
And part of managing for that predictability is there's usually kind of a 7 to 10 day either shutdown or very slow period. Part of that is building up raw material inventory ahead of time and having planned shipments of raw material right after the event. Now that 7 to 10 days is going to be 25. And so recovering from that is going to be very, very difficult, especially when the recovery plan had material landing 2 weeks ago that can't be landed, it can't be processed. And then there's all of the upstream stuff, not just the final assembly and test houses, but the semiconductor packaging people, the people that are making passive devices, ferromagnetics, the people that are making printed circuit boards, all of those lines are stopped. So not only is there not the delivery of replacement inventory, a lot of the replacement inventory can't yet be built. So I think we're going to have a couple of cycles of this. I think there's going to be some initial production when people get back, burn off inventory in hand, and then I think we'll see, 2 weeks later, I think we'll see the real impact.
Yeah, and you talk about two different impacts. For me, there are almost two different problems to resolve. We've got a short-term problem, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what you're doing to help people resolve that. And then we've got a little bit of a thoughtful redesign of supply chain required afterwards. Let's start with the short-term issues. How are you helping your customers, and how are you helping people get through this period?
Well, for those of our customers who are sitting on some level of inventory where they have access to it, some people will do some vendor-managed inventories offshore. As long as there is raw material, there's usually something that can be done. But a lot of our customers, we can't actually do a lot for. There's no material. They have unique test equipment that is locked in a plant in Suzhou or somewhere, and so it's fairly challenging.
Yeah, and then when you look at meeting that challenge, one of the things you need is data. You need real information. Is there, I know a lot of people manage their supply chains on spreadsheets, but is there the access to real-time data that actually allows us to say, hey, we can let this one slide, this one's really important, we've got access to this vendor there. Do people have that at their fingertips? Do you have it at your fingertips for them?
We have some customers that have pretty good data that way, that are in the consumer electronics space, relatively high volume, and stuff that has a fairly short shelf life and a very high propensity to be replaced. If it's not on the shelf, I might reach for this other one. And so they really have to master that data. But I would say our average customer, in fact the average OEM, it's amazing the amount of data that they don't have, where data exists in the supply chain. It's a matter of accessing it, aggregating it, applying some intelligence, artificial or otherwise, to it, and being able to make decisions. One of the things a lot of people are grappling with right now is what really is my exposure to this coronavirus and how long will it take me to get back up to full production? And so in the outsourced world, most companies have a pretty good understanding of here is where I build my product. But if you go one level upstream from that, or 2 or 3 levels upstream from that, they have no idea anymore. Right? I hire Foxconn or Pegatron or Flex to go manage that. And so I don't know where this stuff comes from. So I have to call them and go, where do you get this? And what really are the points of confluence where there's going to be a real constriction coming out of this? And I think you're going to see a lot of investment in supply chain visibility software over the next couple of years. You saw it right after Fukushima. You saw a lot of people say, we've got to get better at this. And some did, and some did some fits and starts and gave it a shot for a while and kind of abandoned it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the danger, isn't it? You get people thinking, oh, we got away with it this time, let's just push on. And then you get those that say, hey, we need a fundamental redesign. Quick question on where we are in the existing situation. Obviously, you're taking care of all your existing customers. Are you getting many calls from people that just say, hey, Ron, we're in a lot of trouble, can you help? And can you help?
We are getting quite a few calls, and there's not a lot that we can do. If you have 100% of your production in China and somewhere that's shut down, there's not much that we can do. There are some smaller suppliers that are trying to work around the quarantine and starting up production, and most of those are getting shut down pretty quickly and fined, and in a couple of circumstances some people have been jailed over trying to work around the quarantine, and that's certainly not going to help. But right now, until China opens up next Monday and we start getting some data flow, there's not a lot that we can do. I would love to sit here and say, call us, we can help, but we're pretty limited in what we can do at the moment.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and we talk about China opening up next Monday. We don't know that for sure at this stage, and that's one of the big challenges.
I just hope if we're not opening Monday, I'd rather learn that sooner than later. So
that doesn't want to be Monday morning's news, does it? Yes. So absolutely. Ron, thanks for stopping by. I know we've got some other stuff scheduled, so we'll talk again through the show, but have a great day. Thank you.
Good seeing you.